I'm going to ask you a simple question. Who built the Chalukyan Empire? Now, if you said Immadi Pulakeshi or Pulakeshi II, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. It was actually his father, Kirtivarman I. You might say, hey, wait a minute. All my life, I've heard about Immadi Pulakeshi. He's the most famous Chalukyan king. Many people say he should be called the father of Indian Navy itself. And some people even go further and say he built the identity of Karnataka itself. Now, these ideas are a little bit far fetched, dare I say, even a bit ignorant. So, today we are going to fix all of this and we are going to see who actually built the Chalukyan Empire, who took it from a kingdom and made it into an empire. Today we are going to learn about Kirtivarman I. Hi folks, I'm Vishnu and welcome back to Empires in Stone. In 566 AD, Kirtivarman became the king of the Chalukyas. He inherited a relatively small kingdom from his father. It was just a fort built in Vatapi and it controlled the regions around Vatapi. But Kirtivarman wasn't satisfied by this. He wanted more. He was an extremely ambitious man. So he decided to go on a conquest that would build his future empire. So, how did he go about building his empire? Well, his first target were the old masters of the Chalukyas and the region of Karnataka itself. It was the Kadambas. So, Pulakeshin decided to go on war with the Kadambas. But who exactly did he go to war with? Now you might be wondering, I just said he went to war with the Kadambas. But at this time, the Kadambas were in a sorry state to say the least. There were three people, all claiming to be the king of Kadambas. They had their own following, their own armies, their own territories. They had pretty much turned Kadambas into a hodgepodge and a shell of its former glorious self. So what did Pulakeshin do? You might be wondering, did he do the old divide and rule thing? Did he back one guy and fought against the other? Or did he make two guys fight against themselves? No, none of that. Kirtivarman, well, he was a warrior at heart. So he decided to go to war with all three of them. And he not only went to war with them, he actually defeated all three of them. And on top of all this, he marched his army straight into Banavasi, or Vaijayanti as it was called back then. It was the capital of the Kadambas. He walked in there with his army and made an old prince of Kadambas who actually had some sort of a legitimate claim to the throne, the king of the Kadambas. You might be wondering, well, isn't this a bit weird? The guy went to war with three people, defeated all three, took the capital, and made a Kadamba prince a king again. What is this about? Well, he didn't just make him a king, he made him a vassal of himself. Now, this word vassal, I used this in the previous video a lot too. I'm going to use it in this video a lot too and in all of my future videos. If you have any interest in studying history, you have to know this word. So what does this word mean? It's quite simple actually. Let's say there are two kings who go to war and one king defeats the other king. Now, the king who has been defeated is usually given two options by the king who has won. And those two options are, first one, die, lose everything you have, your titles, your lands, your riches, your wealth, everything, and be erased forever. Second one is stay in power, still be the king, hold on to all of your land, all of your wealth, all of your titles, your kingdom. But there is a very important caveat to this. What is that? The losing king has to submit to the winning king and rule in his name. In our example, Ajavarman, the king who was placed on the Kadamba throne by Kirtivarman, will have to rule in the name of Kirtivarman. He has to accept Kirtivarman as his overlord and rule as his subordinate. He's a king, but just in name. If you have watched the series Game of Thrones, you might have heard the phrase bending the knee. Bend the knee. This is exactly that. Bending the knee is basically accepting the winning king as the overlord of yourself. And that is exactly what happened in this case. Ajavarman, the old Kadamban prince who was made king by Kirtivarman, had been made a vassal by Kirtivarman himself. I know it might sound a little bit confusing, but bear with me. We'll understand it further as we go further. So, Kirtivarman made a Kadamba king his vassal, and that vassal was ruling for Kirtivarman in his name. Next thing Kirtivarman did was he went on a diplomatic mission this time. He didn't go on a war mission for a change. He went on a diplomatic mission and he married a princess from another royal family, the Sendrakas. These Sendrakas were an old ally or friends of the Kadambas. Now, by marrying this princess, what Kirtivarman effectively did was he neutralized the threat of the Sendrakas standing up against him or helping the Kadambas do something not so great in the future. After this, Kirtivarman went back to his old self, went back to his ways of wars. He decided to go against the Gangas of Talakadu and the Alupas. Now, why did he go against these guys? Well, these guys were old vassals of the Kadambas. Now that the Kadambas had been defeated and destroyed, they might get ideas of, let's just separate ourselves from the old business of vassalship and all and go on our own separate ways and become independent kings. But Kirtivarman didn't really like this. He wanted all of them to be his own vassals. He wanted to control all of their territories. So he marched into the territories of the Gangas and the Alupas and submitted them and made them his vassals too. Now, by doing this, Kirtivarman had effectively subjugated his southern flank or the southern part of his enemies. The southern side of his territories were completely subjugated and under his control now. After doing this, Kirtivarman looked west towards the Konkan coast. Now, this piece of land is extremely important. It has been extremely important for all of history. It is important today and will be important in the future also for any power that wants to rule India. Now, you might be saying, why is that? It's extremely simple. The ports on the Konkan coast are the ports that take trade from India towards the west, towards the Arabic Peninsula and the European continent too. Trade flows from there to India through the ports in Konkan coast and from India to those western lands through the ports of Konkan. And whoever controlled these ports could effectively control that trade itself. And what does that mean? You control trade, you can tax it. You tax it, you get extremely wealthy. This is what Kirtivarman wanted. And to do this, he had to defeat a power that ruled the Konkan area, and that was the Konkana Mauryas. In the year 576 CE or 576 AD as it used to be called, Pulakeshin went on another conquest. But this conquest is sort of unique because this was one of the earliest instances of a South Indian power going on a conquest using a naval force. Now, remember when I said in the intro, many people want Immadi Pulikeshi to be called the father of the Indian Navy because they believe he started the concept of naval warfare in India. It wasn't him, it was actually his father, Kirtivarman. He was the first man to go on a naval conquest. And where was the first place he went to? It was Revati Dvipa, or as it's called today, Goa, the place we all know and love, the place we all go to our vacations for. So Kirtivarman didn't go for a vacation, of course. He went to conquer Goa, and he did conquer Goa. After destroying Goa and taking it under his control, he moved northwards again. He went on to the capital of the Konkana Mauryas, which was Puri. And again, this is not Jagannath Puri. This is on the other side of India. This is Elephanta Island in Mumbai as we know it today. Kirtivarman took control of Puri and completely and utterly wiped out the Konkana Mauryas. After wiping them out, he didn't make him their vassals. This time he went on a different route. This region of India, the Konkan coast, was too important, was too powerful to be ruled by some vassal. Kirtivarma did not want to do that. He wanted someone he knew, someone he trusted to take care of this place for him. And to do that, he appointed his relative, a Chalukyan prince, who was related to Kirtivarman from his mother's side. And we believe it was either Swami, it was either Swami Raja, Swami Raja or Indravarman, one of these guys. Historians aren't really quite sure who it exactly was, but we know definitely it was one of these guys, and we know this person was related to Kirtivarman himself. So Kirtivarman handed this region to be ruled by this person, Indravarman or Swami Raja, as a governor, the Chalukyas. These guys, or this person specifically, took care of the administration, the justice, etc., etc., everything that basically comes with ruling a place for the Chalukyas as the governors. Now that he had conquered the Konkan coast, Kirtivarman set his sights on another power that ruled the Deccan region at that time. To be more specific, these guys were a bit northern to the Deccan region. They ruled the region of modern day Chhattisgarh. They ruled the forests, and this power was the Nalas. Now, Nalas were an extremely fierce warrior people themselves. They had resisted conquests from other empires, other great empires, for generations, and they had done it successfully. But unfortunately, luck wasn't on their side this time. This time they faced a completely different beast. This time they faced Kirtivarman. Kirtivarman marched with his army in the Nala territories and he took it all over. We don't know exactly what he did after the conquests. We don't know if he put in place a vassal or did he completely annihilate the Nalas. Most scholars believe he might have put in place a vassal or Nala king himself and subjugated him and extracted tribute. After doing all of this, you might be wondering, if Kirtivarman has just been spending all of his life going on conquests one after the other, he went on conquests on Kadambas, then the Gangas, the Alupas, the Konkan coast, and now the Nalas. Who was taking care of the empire itself? There must be somebody staying in the capital, taking care of running the government, taking care of the problem of the peoples, the citizens, enforcing laws, extracting taxes, building infrastructure. Who was doing all of this? Well, Kirtivarman took a page out of his father's playbook. He delegated this job to one of his most trusted people, his own brother, and this was Mangalesha. When Kirtivarman was going out on his glorious conquest and earning a lot of glory for himself and his empire and his family, it was Mangalesha who actually stayed back in the capital and took care of administration. Mangalesha was an extremely capable administrator. He took care of taxation, he took care of enforcing laws, he took care of solving disputes and taking care of basically justice. And to do all of this is not possible for a single man. The kingdom had to be divided into much smaller zones of administration, just like India is divided today, just like basically every country is divided today. There is a country on top, then there are states, then there are districts, then there are talukas and villages and so forth in India. Just the same way, the Chalukyas did something similar. They divided their kingdom into different zones of administration, and at the top was of course the empire headed by the emperor himself, and it was Kirtivarman. Under the empire there was the Rashtras, and these Rashtras were headed by someone called Rashtrapatis. Under the Rashtras there were Vaishyas or districts. This was headed by Vaishyapatis. Under that there were Nadus. Under those at the bottom there were Gramas, just like today, and these were headed by Gramakutas. So by delegating their administration at different levels to different people with different levels of power, Chalukyas effectively controlled their empire in a much more decentralized way. But the authority still rested right on top in the hands of the emperor. This efficient administrative system helped their empire grow and prosper much more than it could have with the archaic warlord militaristic type of system. That wouldn't have worked for a long time. Those things are, historically speaking, extremely temporary. They don't last a long time. But systems like these, hard systems, they actually last much longer than the people who set them up, much longer than the empires that set them up. Even today, if you look at the way India is administered, a lot of these things have been borrowed over from the people or the powers that ruled India before the modern day governments. And the Chalukyan system also kept on inspiring many more administrative systems that came after them. Their emblem, the Varaha emblem, that inspired emblem of the Vijayanagara Empire that came almost 800 years after them. The coins that they introduced, specifically the Varaha coin, please don't confuse the Varaha emblem with the Varaha coin. They are different things. They have the same name. That's it. The Varaha coin also stayed on much longer than the Chalukyan Empire. They stayed on all the way up until the Wadiyars of Mysore. They also used the name Varaha for their coins. They modified it just a little bit. They called it the Kantirava Varaha after the Mysore Wadiyar king who introduced it. But you can see the impact all the way from 500s to the Wadiyars of Mysore. The Wadiyars of Mysore basically ruled Karnataka right up until the independence of India. So as I said, the systems, they stay, even though the empires that set them up fall. And speaking of falling, all good things must come to an end. So did the days of Kirtivarman. The man who had built this empire, the man who had overlooked and overseen all of these systems being set up. Not only that, he was also the man who actually commissioned the building of the Badami caves, specifically cave number 3, which is arguably the most beautiful cave of all of those. This man was on his deathbed, and in 597 CE, Kirtivarman I passed away. He died quite young. He left behind three kids. Eldest among them was Yeraya. Now, according to conventional wisdom, you might expect Yeraya to be the king, but Yeraya was way too young. He was just a child. So the Chalukyan court decided, instead of making a child a king and putting the empire on the route to instability, it would be wise to let Mangalesha become the king and take care of the administration, just as he had been doing all of these years. So Mangalesha was crowned king, but there was one condition. Mangalesha would be king until Yeraya came of age and was eligible to become king himself. Now, this Yeraya, this person, this kid would eventually go on to become Pulakeshin II or Immadi Pulakeshi. And this condition on which Mangalesha was made king, the condition that he would give up his throne eventually to Yeraya, that would become the first biggest test for the Chalukyas, the first great test for the Chalukyas. We will see all of this in the next episode. Until then, stay curious. Bye.